Well, welcome. Summertime and the living is easy. Today is August 21st. We're in the Upper Dublin High School Cardinal Room. This is the School District of Upper Dublin legislative meeting for August. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to start by asking everybody to please stand, and Dr. Sandberg, will you lead us in this salute to the flag?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay. Ms. Evans, roll call, please.
Mr. Shimeleski.
Excused.
Mrs. Good.
Here.
Mrs. Hester.
Here.
Dr. Ludwig.
She's out of town. Excused.
Dr. Kim.
Here.
Mrs. Rothman.
She's excused.
Dr. Resnick.
Here.
Mr. Sirota.
Here.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Here. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move right to our student is not here tonight. Hopefully he's enjoying his time off. And we will move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Wheeler.
Thank you. We are now 2 weeks away from the opening of school, and I would like to provide what I was going to describe as a brief update to the board, but I fear it's not going to be all that brief. There is a lot of information to communicate. First and foremost, perhaps, our facilities are nearing readiness. We will be able to open on time on September 5th. The new floors have now been installed at Thomas Fitz, Fort Washington, and Jarretttown according to our replacement schedule. You may know that we had a little bit of difficulty getting the contractor in to do the work after the floor tiles were delivered. However, they were installed last week, and waxing was to occur today. So we are on schedule with that replacement of 3 to 4 classrooms a year. The electrical upgrade has been completed at Thomas Fitz and all looks well. Our classroom tech upgrades are almost completed. We have in many of our classrooms new workstations with interactive projectors and whiteboards installed. These will untether the teachers from a stationary teaching center and facilitate movement around the room and will allow supportive interaction with more students on a more regular basis. Our bus pickup and drop-off information was released today via email. We know we were contacted by a member of the community, a parent, that there is at least one hiccup, so thank you for that, and we are working on getting that straightened out. The hack will open on Wednesday afternoon with student schedules available. We are asking that all parents review their children's demographic data that's in the hack and make any necessary corrections. This will streamline our opening of the school year. In the past, when our building secretaries were entering all of those data by hand, it was several weeks before we had updated, accurate demographic information that we could depend on. This way, we will have accurate emergency contact information on the first day of school, which is very important. Anyone with questions can see the district website for specific information and directions about accessing the hack. On the home page, quick links in the upper right-hand page of the page will give you that. Also on the website is information about the new Pennsylvania Health Department vaccination requirements. There has been a significant change. The information is posted along with the pertinent immunization documents on the website. It's important to note that the grace period for school attendance has been reduced to 5 days for students who are coming in without vaccinations. So those vaccinations must have happened, or there must be a demonstrated schedule for those vaccinations to occur. And specific questions, of course, can be directed to our school nurses. Secondly, an update to the board on our Sandy Run Middle School Project Review Committee. We met for our final session on August 8th, and drafted a recommendation to the Board of School Directors. I would like to share with you directly from the conclusions and recommendations section of that recommendation document. The committee finds that the existing buildings do not serve our educational program needs or meet ADA compliance. The committee expressed concern that the district does not have, and therefore recommended that the district should develop a long-term district-wide capital plan that integrates the funding required for the projects to be implemented, including the cost of a new building at Sandy Run. As informed by the new district-wide capital plan, when the district is prepared to take on a new project at Sandy Run Middle School, the committee recommends that both buildings should be replaced with a new building on the existing site. Two facts were cited as necessitating a facilities improvement project at Sandy Run Middle School. The facility as it currently exists does not support the way that we now teach. Learning spaces are not flexible or adaptable. Current space does not promote collaboration among teachers and students. The Library Media Center does not support group or collaborative work. Several key classroom spaces are without windows, and the undersized gym cannot accommodate our needs. Additionally, significant ADA compliance issues exist in each building. The deficiencies in accessibility, as identified through the Americans with Disabilities Act, are extensive. The main building would be costly to renovate for ADA compliance. Such renovation of the annex would not be possible. Several members of our community have shared with me their perspective that our classroom and other school spaces have been adequate for instruction over the years. And yes, our teachers and students have successfully utilized our existing instructional spaces, but we no longer teach with students in desks facing the board in the front of the room, and both teachers and students are constrained by the present physical layout of the buildings. We need to create improved spaces that support how our teachers teach and how our students learn. 21st century classrooms may or may not require additional space footage. What they do require is change within the classroom spaces, within the hallways, and within the flexible group meeting areas that will enhance learning for these middle-level learners. Design enhancements within a redesigned space will provide learning opportunities that our students and teachers need to remain competitive and develop the skills that our students will need in high school and in the post-secondary world. Briefly, we need collaborative instructional environments, shared classroom and hallway spaces where curricula integration can occur naturally, a library media center as the learning center of the school, and large and small group meeting spaces contiguous to teamed classroom spaces. Teaming and middle school instruction can be better accomplished if there are different instructional configurations readily available through flexible classroom and learning spaces. These learning spaces should provide open floor space, the potential for multiple seating options, flex zones where students can collaborate and create, workstations for differentiated learning. They should be functional for purposeful design thinking and present large and small group opportunities with natural light via windows in all learning spaces. Student support services should be embedded within these teamed instructional spaces. Dr. Clark, our middle school principal, is here this evening and is prepared to speak should the board wish to have additional information shared about this from our building leader. Finally, the board will hold the first community forum in regard to this recommendation on September 26th at Sandy Run Middle School. The meeting will follow the first meeting of the Sandy Run Middle School PTO, and we appreciate the PTO Executive Board's willingness to abbreviate their meeting to accommodate this community forum. And it will be preceded by tours of the buildings. Specific information will be shared through the district website and direct communication with our community. And my last item this evening, I don't know if anyone else noted throughout our property several happy thought rocks were recently found at the administrative center, having been shared with us by an unknown benefactor. So I brought 3 to share with the board, and we'll replace them tomorrow so they can continue to brighten our grounds and inspire those who see them. So thank you to whoever shared these happy thought rocks with us. They are appreciated. And that concludes my report this evening.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wheeler. Are there any comments or questions from the board regarding the superintendent's report? Okay. Mr. Sirota.
Just with regard to the Sandy Run portion of Dr. Wheeler's report, just the next steps for that procedure is that the full report, that was an excerpt from the recommendations section of the draft as it stands right now. Possible that small changes could still happen to that draft, but nothing extensive. The draft should be presented to the board in a formal presentation, tentatively scheduled for our October legislative meeting, along with at least one dissent that has yet to be, I think, yet to be drafted. And then we'll have this community forum. Some of what Dr. Wheeler shared was about, thinking ahead to the design for the next meeting. That's not part of the recommendation. The recommendation is simply that that we should do a long-term district-wide capital plan, and when that plan says that we can handle a facilities project, we should replace the buildings. As we won't really get into that next generation design phase, although I know we're all excited to think about it until sometime later. So that process has not been fleshed out yet. Thanks.
That is correct, and thank you for that clarification. I think it's important that I responded to the questions that were specifically asked about what does it mean that we don't teach the way we used to teach. And thus, I provided that explanation without any expectation that it described the design process. You're absolutely right. That will be a long, I think, involved and collaborative process with our community. But we're on the road, and that is good news indeed.
Well, Dr. Clark, just stand by in case there are some questions from the community. Okay, thank you. Okay, we are already at the community input since there are no presentations tonight. So if you would like to address the board, kindly step up to the podium. General policies in effect, 4 minutes. Please state your name and where you reside in the community.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I have some questions. Well, I'll start with the simple ones. I haven't seen any minutes from the Sandy Run Committee Task Force, whatever it's called. Are there going to be minutes? Are they going to be posted on the website? I'm glad you already answered one question, which is it sounds like you're going to have a meeting in September. I guess my follow-up is, are you having more than one meeting on just the Sandy Run issue? I appreciate what you said, Dr. Wheeler. I don't know if maybe I need more specifics and maybe I have to meet with you, but I find the documents on the website do not make as strong of a case as you probably think they're making. So the 2 documents I'm referring to are the infrastructure deficiencies and the educational specs, and I don't have time in 4 minutes to get to everything. But I thought our teachers were already moving around. I thought they were already collaborating. I thought they were already doing team planning. I mean, I know that when I was on the board, which I was elected in '99, so it is a long time ago, they asked for more time for team planning, but there was plenty of space. Nobody was complaining about space, and the numbers haven't gone up. So some of the things that I just made an assumption were already happening at Sandy Run. You're kind of making it sound like they haven't been happening. So I'm not sure, what that really means. It leads me to another question, which is, and I don't know if this would be for the board to answer. Are you intending to have a much larger building? Because I thought enrollment was a big part of this, and there is no increase in enrollment. You've been saying it's stable. I mean, I can understand if you want to have 1 or 2 extra classrooms if you build a $70 million project. I can't understand if you build for 150 more kids like you actually did for this building, okay? So I have some concerns that you're saying, oh, we need space for this, space for that, like this isn't happening. And I'm going to put science in a separate category for now, and I'm going to kind of put the annex in a separate category. But if I were to focus just on 7th and 8th grade, English, math, social studies, our kids should be getting the best. And even science was terrific at Sandy Run. We used to have the most science fair winners other than Cheltenham. So just because you have an old science lab doesn't mean that it's, a terrible thing. But I can see putting science labs in a different category. So are you intending to build a much larger building would be one of my questions. It sounded like from meetings I observed that the planetarium is not included. It would sure be a shame to just demolish one of the few schools in Montgomery County that has a planetarium. Is that the plan? If the plan would be to build a new planetarium, what's the rough cost on that? Because it doesn't sound like it's included in the $70 million. Next question is about the engineer. He seems like a perfectly nice guy. I don't think I'm not in love with the guy like you guys seem to be. The board seems to really love this engineer, that he's at all the important meetings. Have you already made your decision to hire him for $70 million? Why wouldn't you explain to the community that you want to get, if you go forward with this project, you want to get for the community, I hope, the best possible price, not the highest possible price. We've been, certainly some people have been complaining and have expressed concern, not even just about the tax increases on a personal level, but what the tax increases are doing to Upper Dublin's reputation and real estate values. Many, many people have been complaining about that. On your long-range plan for facilities, which it sounds like you will do before you vote on this, I would like some clarity as to, is there going to be a long-range financial plan going along with it? I don't just mean cost. I don't mean that you say, okay, what we need at all the elementary schools is another 50 or 60 million. I mean, is there going to be a plan showing us the real taxes that include the regular personnel increases every year, that what will be included for the likely next contract, or at least some placeholder numbers? Those are some of my questions.
Anyone else? Okay, we will close community input. Who would like to respond first on this?
Well, there certainly will. It certainly is our intent to have more than one community forum. This will be the first on September 26th. There's a question.
The question about doing engineering. They're an engineering firm. They're not the architect. They're working with us to get to the point that we will look at various architects. But we have a contract with them. They're not the architect for the project. We don't know what the project's going to end up costing us. $70 million was the worst scenario based on their experience in terms of what middle schools, similar to what we are potentially looking at, are costing these days. And most recently, a project did come in lower than they expected. So we're hoping that it would not be the 70 million, that it would be lower, but we're not at that point yet. So he's the construction manager that we hired with a contract, but he's definitely not the architect that will go out, and we will interview various architects on this project and ask them what they would do with the space that we have at Sandy Run. Are we looking to build a much larger building? I don't know we're at that point yet. Mr. Sirota?
On that point, so the working numbers we have, the existing buildings together are approximately 178,000 square feet. And the working numbers we were working with based on the ed specs that were drafted as part of this process so far work out to about 200 and, I'm a little bit small, let me see, 208,000, I think it says, square feet. But like I say, we haven't actually designed a building yet, but in rough numbers, based on the educational specs that we drafted, which are of course also not final because we haven't designed a building yet, but it looks like we might want a slightly larger building. In terms of number of students, well, we'll talk a little bit later tonight about, is the Montgomery planning on the agenda? But we will have, sometime in the near future, a report from Montgomery County Planning Commission to help with enrollment projections. But we're looking at a building for, 950-ish students, which is similar in size to where we are.
We've discussed a number of times the status of the planetarium, Mr. Sirota.
Right, the planetarium is not in the specs that we had so far. We know, certainly I feel, that the planetarium is a valuable part of our program. The plan for making a decision about what we would build in the future obviously has to include, if we replace the buildings, like if we keep the buildings, obviously we would keep the planetarium. If we were going to replace the building, the question is, would we build a planetarium in a new building? We haven't designed the building yet, but that'll be a discussion that we will have to have in the future through the design process. It would be like a year-long process whenever it is that we start. And I know that there are opinions all over the place on that, no decision has been made yet. We'll have presentations about how it's tied into the curriculum, what the possibilities are for planetariums these days, how is that kind of stuff delivered in a 21st century way? Do you need a room with a dome? Do you need VR glasses or whatever whatever the technology is? So we'll have to look at that. Is that mine? Whoever's on, you might turn it off. We'll have to learn how to use these things, I think. And the same thing, by the way, goes for the wrestling room. So we talk a lot about the planetarium, the wrestling room. The current building has a wrestling room. There don't seem to be as many people who are as vocal about the wrestling room, but that is kind of a special thing, and taking something away affects, the program that we offer. So we'll have to have a discussion alongside that. If we build a new building, would it have a wrestling room?
There's a question regarding the long-range financial plan versus the long-range capital plan, which are two distinct plans. That there's the long-range financial plan that Ms. Bray presents to us on a yearly basis. So do you care to elaborate, Ms. Bray, on that?
I'm happy to. Certainly, we would update the long-term financial projections to include whatever costs we have. And there would be always assumptions, just as we've done for the last, I believe it is 3 years. We make assumptions about salaries, put in PSERS, assumptions about medical, and we would continue to do all of those things, but just layer in or include capital.
Right, so just to clarify, every year you come to the board with a model that's developed by PFM, I believe. Is it their model?
Yes.
And we plug in, it's a very sophisticated spreadsheets with various tabs, and we put in various scenarios in there, and it projects out 3 years. So
actually, it projects 5 years.
5 years.
But we tend to look most seriously at 3 years.
Right, so we do that, we've been doing that.
We've done that for the last 3 years in September at the Finance Committee,
Right.
Not at the legislative meeting.
Now, the newer plan is the capital program.
And within the model, there is a place to put in those numbers for the capital improvements each year.
Right, and the capital plan, we will start looking at that at this Thursday's operation meeting.
We will have some very preliminary discussions, but Mr. Lester and I and Dr. Wheeler, we've been talking about it internally, so we will be discussing that with the Finance Committee,
Right.
Operations Committee this Thursday evening.
Okay. In terms of Ms. Brisser's comments regarding the infrastructure deficiencies of Sandy Run Middle School, stating that we have not made a good case, I think that's her perception, and I don't think we're going to be able to change her perception. But when we have a majority of the review committee tour the facility, it was very clear to them that there were significant infrastructure deficiencies. So it's a perception. I know when I go through that building, or especially through the annex, and when I try to go through the classrooms on the second levels and try to get around, there are significant infrastructure deficiencies, in my opinion, not in her opinion. So, you know, and in terms of the instructional program and how we handle the instructional program, that what would be different in a new facility, I think when you walk around the high school now, it's just amazing in terms of the various types of learning that goes on in this building. And a lot of that has to do with Mr. Vinogradov's work in the area of technology. But if the facility didn't lend itself to those types of collaborative learning spaces, students working in the hallways, in the sections that we have in each side of the building, the shared classroom between all of our language arts classes, that's what makes it different. And I think when you walk through this building, you see that it's not just the teacher standing in front of a classroom lecturing anymore, that learning is very, very different. I'll ask, like Mr. Vinogradov, I don't know if I explained it correctly, or as well as probably you can, as the expert in technology and how we're delivering, instruction, or Ms. Morrison. It's a very different approach compared to what we had in the old high school. And it's should not be limited to high school, but that type of learning should be available to middle school students too. Ms. Morrison or Mr. Vinogradov, anything to add?
Dr. Clark.
I'll get there last.
I think recently, am I on? Okay. We spent last week in our administrative retreat, and one of our middle school administrators, beginning part of his administrative career, we're living in a time now with such tremendous change in terms of how education is done, that when we look back on this time, it'll be a very reflective place. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you happening. And I would say that the prominent feature is that it used to be the case that the teacher in front of the room had all of the information necessary to deliver the course and prepare the learner in her head, and was able to deliver that information. Now that what we know about students graduating from our high schools and universities is that they can't arrive with knowledge in their head. What they have to be able to do is be competent learners who can process all of the information that comes on a daily basis in plethora, and be able to make intelligent decisions to communicate around that information. In other words, and not simply put, so much has changed since the time I started being a teacher in 1990, and we are making those changes to prepare students, and it is an exciting time, but it is certainly a time filled with change.
I'll just jump in with and a little bit more on the research. So having tremendous facilities and wonderful tools and technology does not yield a change in practice, right? But they facilitate transformative practice. And it's really challenging when you're trying to shift your practice when both the tools that you have access to and the facilities that you have access to constrain that change. And so Ms. Morrison was referencing, our current educational system is 150 years old, And it's an industrial paradigm that has built into it some assumptions, right? And one of those assumptions is that every learner is ready to learn at the same time and ready to be assessed at the same time. And that contradicts everything we know about how learning happens, and that learning is social, it's personal pace, it really depends on the relationship formed with teacher and with the community that's created in the classroom. And to have flexible spaces accommodates that flexible learning and that personalized learning. And so that has to be a part of, as we think about space design, what opportunities do we have in space design, what are the current constraints that we have in Sandy Run, which really doesn't have those kinds of spaces built in the way that we have here in the high school. And when you came to this meeting tonight, you walked by an alcove that is being transformed. This building was built, and still the mindset when this building was built was part of that industrial model. It was built around that industrial model of education, but built into this building was flexibility. And you start to see, as the practice is changing, we're starting to leverage spaces in ways that support that pedagogy.
Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. I'd like to address just additional comments from Mrs. Brister in terms of not much of what was built, designed, or born 50 years ago is still being used as it was designed, like my knees included, right? If I could get a new set of knees, I would do things much more effectively. So it's not so much just rebuilding because it's old, but because our teachers are consummate professionals and they're good at what they do, and they have a bevy of educated, engaged students as well as parents who support what we do, they're able to collaborate, they're able to team plan in the spaces, but they do so in confined manners. They don't do it's somewhat in isolation because they'll meet in one room to plan, but then they're separate in different wings of the building. The additional space is probably because we're using some of those common spaces now for different support services. For example, we have a Lakeside social worker. We also have a part-time Magellan counselor coming in. We have the need for a special ed department room. We have many IEP, GIEP meetings. We have teacher team meetings. So some of those spaces formerly used just for teachers to plan are now being utilized for other spaces. We've already talked about the library, the uniqueness of the planetarium. So we do so within confined spaces with limitations, but the additional square footage that we've talked about in brief at our project review committee meetings can only serve the students, and we know what the enrollment looks like, right? 5, 10 years out. So it's not building a larger space for additional students, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's so that we can do different things, as Phil and Ava just alluded to, that allow the kids to interact with one another and interact with teams of teachers, not just period by period as they move through their 7-hour day. So there are a lot of opportunities that exist for the kids who will remain bright and engaged, but there's also research out there that shows that test scores improve when the physical environment of a school is enhanced. So there's all kinds of things that support what the Project Review Committee is proposing, and as the building leader, of course, I can only see that our students will continue to soar, and I also hope that we have the opportunity to allow the community to come in and use the spaces just like they do here at the high school. So I could wax all night, but I won't. I know I'll have additional time later, but I wanted to address some of tonight's comments here at the mic.
There was a question about the minutes or the notes from the meetings. If you go on the website under the Project Review Committee on that page, and you go to the tab Meeting Agendas, you will see notes from the first 3 meetings. The notes from the 4th and final meeting have not yet been compiled. Ms. Evans continues to work on that. So those are available, and those will be posted as soon as they are available. We appreciate everyone's patience as she's going through tapes and written notes from the meeting.
Okay. Any other comments from the board in response to community input? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. Item 6, announcements and communications. Ms. Bray?
There are none this evening.
Okay, do we have any minutes?
We do. We have minutes from the January 15th Operations Committee, as well as the July 17th legislative meeting. If those could be approved. July 17th.
Okay, we have two sets of minutes, June 15th, operations, June 17th, legislative meeting. The board has had an opportunity to review those minutes and put in any edits or changes. Are there any other comments from the board regarding the two sets of minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Oh, let's have a motion. Let's have a motion. Dr. Kim? Dr. Kim, second? Ms. Hester. Okay, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to the Education Committee, Dr. Kim.
Sure, there are 6 motions before us. The first is an enrollment report dated July 28th, which is promising in terms of our CAP numbers. Second is to approve a Leadership Design Academy for the middle school and high school team. Note that in your packets, this was only listed as high school, but it is for the middle school team as well. It's to approve a year-long professional development for middle school and high school teams for personalized learning in the amount of $3,000 per team. The third is to approve Cortex to support English language arts curriculum. It's to approve the purchase of Cortex to support the 11th and 12th grade ELA curriculum in the amount of $6,000. The fourth is to approve the district's participation in the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence in Equity in the amount not to exceed $12,000. And then there are 3 student activities to be approved. And then lastly, there is the conference report. Just a quick note, none of these were mentioned in Education Committee because we did not meet over the summer.
Okay, and the enrollment, just for clarification, is an FYI. It's just an informational item. So we have items B, C, D, E, and F tonight, 5 items under curriculum. Dr. Kim, you made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, was that Ms. Good? Thank you. Any comments or questions regarding the curriculum recommendations?
I have a question about the Cortex to support ELA. Was that in the proposed budget that we saw for curriculum back in like December or whenever that was, or is this something new?
It was part of the proposed budget from
Okay.
the December Finance and Operations Committee.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor of those 5 items with the adjustment of the Leadership Academy to include middle school. Okay, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Moving on, technology, there's nothing in tonight's agenda. Pupil Services, Dr. Kim.
Sure, there are 4 motions. The first is to approve curriculum and professional development. It's to approve 2 days of professional development from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt in the amount of $5,900. The second is to approve the service agreements. There are 7 of them. The third is to approve educational placements as listed, and there are 10 of those, including ESY, private special education, as well as one-to-one aids. And the last is to approve educational agreements as listed, and there are 2 of them.
Okay, motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, Dr. Resnick. Okay, any comments or questions? It's a very busy time of year for Pupil Services. I know you've had a very busy summer, juggling all of our staff, moving everyone around, but I know we're fully staffed, and time took quite a bit of time to put all these agreements, placements together. So, okay, we had a first and a second. Any comments? Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to item 11, which is the Operations Committee recommendations. Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. There are 2 motions tonight. The first is to approve the list of excess, obsolete, and non-repairable equipment for disposal. This was not previously discussed at operations. It is for 3 CRT televisions. Mm-hmm. And the second one was discussed at operations to ratify the purchase of power over Ethernet switches to accommodate the phone system installation in the amount of $14,684.15.
Second is good. Comments or questions? Mr. Vinogradov, 4 months ago we didn't think about upgrading our phone system this coming summer. Can you summarize what happened and then the opportunity that was made available to the district and why we moved forward with this?
Sure. We had a dated phone system, over 11 years old, a Toshiba phone system, the heart of which is a voicemail server, which in many ways is just the brains of the system. It's the switchboard. And it was aging and failing, and we knew we had to look at upgrading to a voice over IP system. It was not an immediate pressing priority with all the other priorities across the district. It was something that facilities and I were monitoring and exploring options for the future with an idea that this 17-18 was the year that we were going to do thorough vetted research. And then as the voicemail server started to go south, we said, well, you know, if worst comes to worst, we'll have to spend some money, get a new voicemail server. But then Toshiba suddenly exited the telecom business. We had a month in which to make a decision. When we had last evaluated phone systems for a district, a VoIP system would have cost about $500,000. So we did extensive research, found an IU11, which essentially cuts out all the middlemen and provides VoIP systems to school districts at cost. So that's for us around $120,000. So the choice was to spend $25,000 on a voicemail server for an 11-year-old system, or spend $120,000 on a new system, soup to nuts, that provides security features that we were lacking, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was a perfect storm, unexpected, but it was a no-brainer to spend the money to do it right, as opposed to spending a quarter of the money to kick it down the road for just 2 more years.
I do believe also the upgrading of the phone system was listed in the 2014 capital improvement plan at a much higher rate for each building. So this is one item that we will be able to check off that list.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. It was at a much, much higher amount.
Okay. Okay. So we had a motion, we had a second. This is on the 2 items in operations. I see no other comments or questions. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to finance. Dr. Resnick.
We have 4 motions tonight under finance. The first motion approving the treasurer's reports for the general fund, food services fund, and the trial balances for Fort Washington Elementary, Maple Glen, Thomas Fitz, Sandy Run Middle School, and Upper Dublin High School. And the second motion approving the payments issued July 8th through August 16th, 2017. The third motion is recommending the approval to carry forward the 2016 to 2017 facility use rates to be used in 2017 to 2018. The rates were reviewed by Mrs. Bray and Mrs. Lohofer, and it was determined all facility use rates were to remain as stated on the approved schedules. And the fourth is recommending approval of the bids received for winter sports supplies for the school year 2017 to 2018.
Thank you, Dr. Resnick. Motion is made by Dr. Resnick. Is there a second? Second, Ms. Hester. Okay, comments or questions on the 4 items under the Finance Committee recommendations? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to personnel. Ms. Good?
Okay. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to pass the 11 items that are listed here, A through K, all of which were discussed in executive session earlier.
Motion was made, seconded by Ms. Hester. Okay, comments or questions regarding personnel? If the community gets a chance to review the list, you'll see that there's quite a number of individuals that have either moved around or that we're hiring. I also would like to ask the community to look at some of the new staff we're bringing in. There are some districts that the boards inform the HR office that we want you to bring in only new people at step one with a bachelor's. But if you take a look at the list of individuals that we are bringing in, you'll see that we have some with a great amount of experience. And the board does understand that sometimes you have to pay a little bit more for some of the people that we want to be in Upper Dublin. So, are there any other comments regarding the personnel report? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to policy, Ms. Hester.
Yes, Art, would you move? There are three motions before us this evening. There's a motion to approve the first reading of Policy 203 and for the adoption and approval of two administrative regulations. All of these policies and regulations were discussed in the policy meeting on July 26th. So I move that the board approve items A through C.
Okay, is there a second? Second, Ms. Good. Comments or questions on the first reading of a policy and the two ARs? Mr. Sirota.
I just want to call the community's attention to item C, as a new administrative regulation on dress and grooming to be effective this school year. I know that this topic has been a big topic in news and social media over the summer, and so not just here, but I mean nationwide. I think we have a strong policy here and administrative regulation, so I just want to call the community's attention to it.
Okay, and any other comments or questions? And there would be links in all of the student handbooks on the on policies and the ARs. Yep. Okay, so at the end of the policy, there's links to the individual, to the AR. Okay. See no other comments or questions. Approve. Okay. We had a first and second. Ms. Good.
Vanessa.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor of those three items in the policy tonight, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. There's nothing under other business. We'll move on to the liaison committee reports. Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. Mr. Chmielewski's not here. Ms. Hester, anything to report on the no report? Eastern did have a meeting last month. We started to take a look at the enrollment at Eastern and the programs. They will be starting up around the same time that Upper Dublin is. Kids do not come in, the students at Eastern do come in later than we begin here at Upper Dublin. But they're looking for a very exciting year at Eastern with some amazing programs that they have to offer. Dr. Ludwig is not here for the EAC. I would imagine PTA, PTO,
I think they're busy getting ready for the school year, and there is a combined leadership meeting to start off the year as well.
There's also a wonderful get-together on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, PTA, at Sandy Run for 6th grade. Wednesday night at 6 o'clock at Mondock. Yep. Mondock, yep. I'm looking forward to it. As long as Ms. Cousins is cooking the burgers, I'll be there. Light refreshments. Feathers. Okay. We look forward to it, and I think it's a great opportunity for 6th grade parents and their children to meet each other and get together and learn another introduction to the what's going on at Sandy Run. And you continue to do your Tuesdays during the day. Talking tours are on Tuesdays? Yes. See? One tomorrow. Yeah, what time tomorrow is the talking tours?
Tomorrow is noon, 2. Next Tuesday will be.
Okay.
This will be our fourth one.
Super. Okay. Township, Mr. Chmielewski is not here tonight. Upper Dublin Education Foundation, Ms. Good.
We're still on summer vacation.
Yes, summer. Okay. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Okay. Solicitors report.
The board met in executive session immediately prior to tonight's meeting and discussed personnel matters.
It's Mr. Chris Kafka. Okay, moving on to community input. Second community input for the evening. Kindly step up, state your name, part of the community you represent. 4 minutes. Okay, we will close community input. Final comments from board members and or superintendent. Any board members? Superintendent?
No, I'm set.
Nope. Okay. Wow. Okay. Just to remind the community about upcoming meetings, I strongly urge you to attend Thursday night's operations meeting. Policy, which is always the highlight of the month for some of us, August 28th at 1:30. And then Education Committee meeting, you'll see that's the first day of school. It's on a Tuesday night. As always, the Education Committees are very informative and provide a great amount of information in terms of what we're doing in our classrooms. One last comment that I wanted to make is I don't think we stressed enough pupil services, the needs at Sandy Run and the requirements of the ADA and the current facility at Sandy Run, which is with significant limitations for our students with disabilities. We're very proud of the fact that 4 or 5 years ago, we had approximately 50 students that were placed out of district. This September, I believe, we're down to 21 students that are being placed out of district. Some of those students have significant, not needs, but in terms of getting around the schools, the current 2 buildings make it very, very difficult for some of those students to get around the buildings. Elevator, steps, what width of doors, they just they're not in code. So I think we cannot forget about the significant concerns that we have with the ADA at Sandy Run and in all of our facilities. One thing we're looking at too at all the elementary schools. Last year we did some work at Fitzwater to make that handicapped accessible, and we're looking at all the buildings to see what needs to be done. Any other comments? Okay, a motion to adjourn. So moved. Mr. Srota, second? Second. Dr. Kim, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Dr. Resnick?
I'm not opposed, but I was going to say that you eclipsed your previous...
Oh!
Right. I couldn't resist. Should have adjourned.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you. And we'll see you in September. The associations.